Hello. We are going to get started. Today is a 6 numerological day. And so 6 or 15, 6 felt right. And that is what we are going to read from. So I am going to show y'all this card. I love this card. I got my light out so y'all can like see us and things more fully. Here you go. This is the card. The poem that goes with this card is called Inner Vision Penetrates the Veils. So we're going to be talking about the Gemini full moon, and we're going to talk about the absolute clusterfuck of non-clarity that we have just birthed ourselves out of as Saturn went direct. So Saturn's direct motion in Pisces is going to and has been, I feel, really counterbalancing Neptune's placement in Pisces in the final kind of like crisis degrees that we've been experiencing. Neptune is illusion, Pisces is illusion, so we got fog. Right. And then Saturn was like, what if I come to help and you can pour the fog into like the cup of me? And that worked for a little bit, but then Saturn went retrograde. And then it was like the walls just fell off and everything just kind of started seeping out again. Right. So we're going to get our shit. We're going to get it all together and we're going to put it back in the cup. That's what we're doing right now. There are some things that came out of the cup that you don't want to put back in there. And this Gemini full moon has really illuminated that. I've talked to so many people that are just like, I don't know, I just woke up and I was thinking differently today. Like this thing that I've been trying to imagine this new way of thinking or this new way of being or getting into it doesn't matter. They're like, I don't know, I woke up and I'm doing it. And then I keep doing it, right? That's kind of what I was talking about with capacity, right? This inner vision that's penetrating our veils, that's seeing through the bullshit to see what we actually have capacity for, what we actually are able to see right now. And there's oftentimes like the fear of the unknown, right, that comes out. But a full moon is for showing you everything. So if you can't see it right now, if you really, really wish you were seeing it and you're not seeing it, it's not there, right? So that means we have action to take. Right? That means I have capacity for this much, but I want this much. So I need to work between here and here, right? I need to decide to take responsibility for the difference between my capacity and my desire, right? Now, I also want to say you have no fucking moral obligation to do that. You literally have no obligation to become a better person. Okay? There's no good reason actually to become a better person. There's also no good reason to become a bad person either, to become someone that you don't enjoy being around. So just take your fucking pick, decide what you want to do, put yourself out of your misery of going back and forth between will I, won't I, right? That's what this full moon is about. Gemini is like the instant plug-in, right? If the plug's right here, Gemini's like, okay, we're in. Okay, we're in. Okay, we're in. Gemini is first impressions. Gemini is getting it fucking going. Even though Gemini is technically a mutable sign, which comes at the end of a season, Gemini's clear seeing and clear connections, right? They make so many connections that they can easily see through what's a clear connection and what's not. Gemini's often willing to cut out unclear connections, right? Gemini rules my 6th house. I'm a Capricorn rising, and Gemini rules my 6th house. 6th house is daily routine and health, right? So there, for me, you want to have a daily routine that fits that day, right? For other people, like he's a Taurus 6th house, he needs that consistency. It needs to be the same thing most days, right? We're very variable. I basically need 2 schedules, right? The Gemini twins of it all. I basically need 2 schedules. When you can look to the house that Gemini rules for you, for example, if Gemini rules your 2nd house of security, finances, things like that, you may have a sense or feeling that you can never quite get as much as you want, right? But there's also not an investment in endurance. So Gemini can look to Sagittarius, the wildfire sign, for lessons in endurance, how to endure something, right? When it comes to our fire signs, I'm kind of like talking all the way around this, but when it comes to our fire signs, like Aries is like a lighter, right? Or like Aries is like a firecracker. Aries is like a firecracker. It's going to burn hot. It's going to be loud, and then it's going to be done. Leo is like a little campfire, right? Like people just kind of want to be around that. People want to be in the orbit, and the campfire is like, hell yeah, I am like the best feature of this entire get together, right? And then you get to Sagittarius, then they're like, I'm a wildfire. I don't really care. I just bigger and bigger, right? Like, let's make everything bigger. Think about the bridge between Sagittarius and Capricorn season is Christmas. And when are people going over the fucking top? Is Christmas, right? People are going over the top at that point. So when it comes to the kind of dance that all of these signs are playing together, we're getting the overall message that now is the time to, if your shit has fallen out of the cup that we are referring to, if your shit's fallen out of that, examine what's on the ground, look at the cup you've got, and put into your cup what you can. For us, the practical action behind that, if you'd like a practical ritual, for us, we're working on projects. We decided to get absolutely everything out of the house that was not related to the projects we were working on, because we got a lot of projects. We're projects people. We got lots of ideas, right? But we got everything out of the house because Gemini favors distraction. And this full moon is illuminating fucking distraction.
Fucking house of distractions.
Yes. There were like, when you have, okay, if none of y'all have moved recently, you're lucky. But if you have moved recently, you understand like there's just so much stuff. Like there's stuff all over the place all the time. And it's like, it took forever for us to even figure out like what rooms were which and like what we wanted for, I don't know. So we had to get everything out that was distracting. Again, Gemini favors distraction because Gemini is constantly making these connections. Gemini needs to learn staying power. And that's why the full moon happens during the opposite sign season, because we get our medicine from the opposition, right? So the full moon's illuminating the distractions that are preventing you from taking advantage of those Jupiterian, Sagittarius themes in your life. The go bigger. I want bigger. I want to expand beyond this kind of pot that I've been growing in. If you want a daily card to work with as a significator for this, pull out 7 of Pentacles. 7 of Pentacles is a reminder that things have gotten as big as they're going to get in the pot that they're in. And sometimes that's as big as they're going to get. And sometimes you need to break the pot open, put it in the ground, and see how big it's going to get. Okay. There's wisdom in knowing the difference. What needed that instant connection, and that's all it is, and what has staying power, what has endurance power. 6s are about moving on. Moving on. We talked about our 6 of Swords, 6 of Cups, 6 of Pentacles, 6 of Wands last week, right? We talked about this like moving forward energy. So let's get into this card and mayhaps a little meditation this morning and see where this Gemini full moon takes us. So again, here's the card that we are working with this week. We are beginning our week with a numerological 6, moving on, freeing from the distraction, seeing through to the distractions is our energy. Inner vision penetrates the veils. Valiant eyes pierce through the veil of fear. And rather than turn my back on you, my love, my eyes look toward the freedom that releases us all. The mystery of the feminine is personified by the traditional dress of Middle Eastern women. The chador, I don't know how to pronounce this word, chador, that covers them from head to foot. Only the eyes, the mirror of the soul, are visible. Our eyes, the most vulnerable and penetrating part of our faces, are the silent information gatherers. Not only is the woman wearing a veil, but she is hidden behind the branches of coral that have the appearance of human tissue. A traditional Northwestern Indian mask, that of a power animal, lends its strength to the wearer. The hawk is a creature whose vision penetrates the skies in search of prey. All the beings in this card are tribal in nature. From the women to the red birds flock together at the bottom of the card. The eyes see beyond the tribal boundaries, and yet tradition holds everything in its place. That sounds like Saturn and Pisces. The red rose represents passion below the surface of the tribal consciousness. Through ritual, that passion is released. Inner vision penetrates the veils as a card of mystery and hidden knowing. In our own tribal consciousness are the belief systems that we value for our survival. They are not always known to us, even though we live by their rules every day. We protect them with our fear, and when they are no longer useful to us, we make them our icons of power. This card asks us to look beyond the veil to see what is hidden there. Do we still need the mask to make us strong? Is it a protection, or is it a barrier that keeps us from life? Is all that we hold dear still valuable? It might be time to look and really see. Wisdom. Use your mask consciously with wisdom. Cherish the hidden wisdom and make a commitment to bring it to the light so that all might be freed. In other words, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. We've just summed up that entire card with Carl Jung's singular quote. Okay. This is about seeing through, and I call this, when I'm coaching, I call it repurposing my rules, repurposing the behavior that's otherwise been at detriment to me, right? I can repurpose my people pleaser to please myself. Full fucking stop. I can repurpose my people pleasing strategy to please myself, making myself my true self, the unmasked self, the North Star that I am like orienting my compass toward, correct? So when we talk about, first of all, this card specifically talks about our tribal consciousness. If you are into human design, look into the first 5 gates. See if you have gates. Oh wait, it might be 4. It's either 4 or 5. Gates 1 through 5 or 1 through 4 are our tribal gates. They represent a biological connection to like our kind of origins as people. But also our tribal consciousness is the hive mind. Our tribal consciousness is the consciousness of tradition, the way things have always been done. Right. And with Saturn and Pisces, the way things have always been done are not going to get us where we're trying to go. What got you here isn't what's going to get you there. It's just what got you here. Right. So when we begin the process of, it says, use your mask consciously with wisdom. That means I have made the pattern, the behavior, whatever it is, known to me. It is now conscious to me. Because it is conscious to me, I am able to wield it in a new way. When I can wield it in a new way, I call this playing my game, right? Because this is a game to my subconscious. The game is to try to make me aware of something. Now that I know it's making me aware, I can participate in the game a little bit. I'm going to tell y'all a story that I tell clients about learning rules. When we learn something from our subconscious, a rule that we were living by, a thing that we had on autopilot that we didn't know about, it is always best to immediately drop into playing a game with yourself. Imagining you have just discovered you walked around the corner, your inner child was standing there, and they are getting ready. They're holding that little card like it's in a video game, and they're about to tell you the rule. This is your rule. That is what it's like, making something that was previously unconscious, conscious, right? A pattern that was or a behavior that was part of my larger pattern, or maybe a pattern, right? So a couple of years ago, when Doctor Strange 2 came out, we were getting ready to go to the movies. I love the Doctor Strange movies. They're some of my favorite Marvel movies. And we had a little routine where we used to live, right? We could make a joint and smoke a joint perfectly from leaving the house to the parking lot of the theater, right? So typically, if any of y'all have all been on calls, when I say 10 a.m.-ish, it's heavy on the ish always, okay? I have a real loosey-goosey approach when it comes to time. So we tend to leave the house late because I am doing whatever it is that I'm doing. I've decided that I have 10 minutes left and I can paint the whole house, like whatever it is, right? And I'm wrong sizing the amount of time I have and the capacity, all of that stuff, right? So at this point, We're getting ready for the movie. I am miraculously on time. So there's very little stress before we're leaving for the movies. We have a joint, we smoke a bowl, we do our whole thing. We go to the movie. If you haven't seen Doctor Strange 2, it's really good. It was a great movie experience. Okay. So we left the movies. I'm feeling great. Right. And we're getting in the car, and I notice as we're getting closer and closer to the house that I am feeling more and more anxious. Right. Why am I feeling so fucking anxious? That's the first question I asked myself. Why am I feeling this way? Really, I could have just stopped at why am I feeling? Because that was the real question I was asking, right? Most of the time. Why am I feeling this way was actually why am I feeling? But I asked myself, why am I feeling this way? And my brain is very smart, so it supplied a lot of answers, right? You've got dishes in the sink. You've got clutter on the table. You've got shoes out. Well, guess what, brain? All of that shit was there before I left the house, but now it's a problem? That's interesting. Why? So we're getting closer to the house, and I'm fucking pissed off at this point. By the time we get in, I'm like picking up shoes that are like next to the shoe thing, and I'm running all of the dialogue in my head about, well, I've walked past this shoe 10 times and I haven't picked it up and he hasn't picked it up and blah, 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 blah. We're playing the game now in my head, but it's on autopilot, right? So I have my arms like full of stuff that I'm going to carry back into the bedroom. And I'm huffing and I'm puffing and I'm stomping down the hall and I'm fucking irritated. And I'm not even saying I'm irritated. I'm just acting irritated. And I make the corner in our bedroom into the bathroom, and I catch my reflection in the mirror. And it was just the perfect moment where I stopped and I was like, what are you doing? And I asked it just like that. Not the way I asked, well, why are you feeling like that? Like it's a crisis to solve. It was like, I don't know, I was an oddity that I was observing, and I was able to just be like, what's happening? And immediately, like I said, it was like meeting that inner child, standing there with directions, going, this is what I'm trying to do. And I was like, oh my God, I love to suffer for enjoying things, for enjoying myself. And I didn't suffer before by making chaos, by being late. So now I have suffered debt, and I got debt to pay. So I came home and made myself suffer. And I was like, oh my fucking God. Okay, this makes my entire life makes sense right now. Okay. So what do I need to do to play the game? That was what I asked next. What do I need to do to play this game? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Okay, I need you to give an Academy Award-worthy performance. Most angry person who has ever cleaned the house. Okay, I need you to huff, I need you to puff, I need you to stomp, I need you to blow the fucking roof down while you're cleaning this house. But you're gonna enjoy it. It's gonna be fun. And I was like, all right, sign me up. Now, here's the thing. It's pretty uncomfortable to be mad on purpose. It's pretty uncomfortable to act an ass on purpose. But you're doing it on autopilot all the time. Right? So this is, in essence, kink. Kink is anything uncomfortable you do with consent. And if you're going to play kinky games and other people have to be participants, we like consent here. Okay? So the first thing I did before I started playing this game was go tell him what I was about to do. Hey, I've discovered a rule. I love to out myself. When I discover these new little like rules I live by, I love to out myself. So, hey, I have just discovered that I really enjoy suffering, and apparently we didn't suffer before the movies. So now I have to suffer now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stomp around the house and I'm going to clean up the house, and you don't need to do anything. Right. And so I did, and I'm huffing and I'm puffing and I'm stomping and I'm cleaning and I'm carrying shit back and forth to all of the rooms, and I'm laughing to myself. And then I'm getting back into it and I'm like, oh, wait. I'm in character right now. Let me put the mask back on. Let me do it on purpose. Let me put my mask back on and play by the rule. Because now I'm playing pretend. And if I can play pretend, if I can make a game, if I can get my body into a state of approval, which is a state of non-constriction, it's in the rest digest part of your brain, right? If I can get my body into that part of my brain while playing my game that I used to play on autopilot, and I can do that a lot, I can lose my interest in living by that rule. Now, sometimes you play your game and you're going to lose your interest really quickly because the subconscious thing that you've brought forward is ready to pluck. It's ready to go. But sometimes you've got to dig deeper. Sometimes there's more friction between that. Like, this is what I had capacity for. This is my suffering friction, right? Sometimes it takes a little more friction to stay there because we're really attached to our suffering, right? I really like my special brand of suffering where I get to complain and everyone gets to give me sympathy and empathy and compassion, and I feel fed and nourished, right? We get attached to our little ways of doing things that are distracting us. And this card is about seeing through those distractions, seeing through the subconscious behavior into what is happening in our conscious lives. It looks like someone has shared Gemini is an 8th house ruler, Sagittarius rising, right? Scorpio, like a half second, right?
It's my first house is Scorpio rising, Sag Uranus.
Okay, so Sagittarius, yeah. So that would mean if you draw the line across, then you're going to go to Taurus. Gemini is going to start in your 7th house, and then it's going to rule your 8th house, right?
Yeah.
So this full moon, and this is something that, like, once you get into astrology, you can start to really key in as to whether whole sign, Placidus, different types of astrology are right for you. Or different systems of astrology are right for you. What most people read and write in that you're going to find just in mainstream astrology is going to be either whole sign. Well, most people write for whole sign, but that's a rant for another time. Whole sign or tropical porphyry. And when we read whole sign, it does make it a little bit easier for stuff like this, right? So I tend to whole sign myself when I am looking for broad themes, but when I'm looking for stuff for myself, like Maggie, you just specifically mentioned, like, this is a full moon at 5 degrees, right?
Yeah.
5 degrees Gemini is probably still in your 7th house. It's not in your 8th house yet. Now, depending on the closeness of it, the proximity, right? If it's within 5 degrees, it is considered conjunct. But again, this is all like, I'll say like 200 level astrology, right? Is like, this is not like remedial astrology or I just know my sun sign, but it's also not just like, oh, I know my chart. This is like, you're starting to get into some of the math. You can stay in the storytelling part for a really long time, but when you start getting into the math of astrology, things really start to reveal themselves. So this full moon is technically in my 5th house of creativity, but it's sitting so closely conjunct my 6th house of daily routine that it is where my creative expression gets lost in the sauce over here in my daily routine. And the things that distract me in my daily routine from this creativity are the things that I use to distract myself. And man, why might I be distracting myself, right? You get to ask better questions, right? So if it's 7th conjoined with 8th, I'm asking, what about the way I relate to other people, or I think other people relate to me, is changing? How can I dissolve that identity so that I'm not putting parameters up, right? How can I make a new first impression on people? Or how can I allow people to make a new first impression on me, right? Your 7th house is like your other rising sign, right? So it's just for all intents and purposes, it's our shadow rising sign, the sign, to draw back to the card, the sign that we put into our subconscious. I describe it as the 7th house ruler is who we put to sleep in order to become that first house identity, right? So again, to draw the parallel back over there, like, what about the way I relate to other people is changing or has gone through a death process? What about the ways that I relate to finding value in what other people tell me about myself are changing, right? Taurus in that 7th house is supporting this, right? It's the money component of it, the security, the energetic exchange, right? So knowing your chart will help you get a little different color on this, but I am going to grab these cards today, and I would love to do some Gemini monologuing, and I'm going to pull some cards for collective themes for this Gemini full moon. There are lots of key players, right? So Apparently we're going astrology heavy today. If you need a meditation, maybe we can meditate afterward. But we are going astrology heavy today. I fucking love Gemini. I love to hate Gemini too. Jesus, if you've ever met a Gemini man, you understand that statement. Okay. If you've never met a Gemini man, Trump's a Gemini. So there you go.
My dad's a Gemini.
All dads are Geminis,
So
except Scorpio dads. That's my theory. But I love Gemini. Gemini is the self-contained paradox, right? Gemini has the most capacity to hold opposing views in mind, maybe because they never commit to a certain point of view, but that's a rant for another time, right? Gemini is able to hold what is and what isn't in mind at the same time, right? People tend to project a lot of their desires for connection and communication onto Gemini. And Gemini tends to make themselves projectable, right? Like Gemini, I had a girlfriend in college who was a Gemini. She is the type of person who is always walking around campus like, hey girl, hey, like she knew who everyone was and everyone knew who she was. Hey Shay, everyone knows her, but no one knows her because she just gives people first impressions of themselves is what it comes down to. Gemini often gives you a first impression of yourself, right? And I hate that. So most of us are pretty uncomfortable with seeing that type of energy that's fully comfortable to itself. The other side of Gemini, let's talk tarot for a second, is the Lover's card. Now I cut the 3 of Swords, so if any of y'all are feeling spicy, let's get into it today. But Gemini is the Lovers, right? Now that makes no logical sense to me, but symbolically it makes perfect sense. The Lover's card is often depicted with 2 people. Will you go through this deck and pull out the Lovers? Gemini, or the Lovers, is depicted with 2 people. Their backs are to you. They are usually naked, as was the Garden of Eden. There is a winged deity whose face you can see. You cannot see the 2 people, but you can see the winged being, the winged deity that is supposedly God, right? So this is God. This is the Lover's card is the set of Adam and Eve's story. However, what is not present on that card is just as important as what is. So let's talk about Lilith and Gemini for a second. Lilith is ruled by Gemini. This is an asteroid, by the way. You can find your Black Moon Lilith on most chart sites if you have the Astro Future app, like I've told you a billion times. Black Moon Lilith is for sure on there. So Lilith was the first woman. Lilith was an equal to Adam. Thank you. Lilith was an equal to Adam. They were made both of clay, as opposed to Eve being made of Adam's rib. And as such, Lilith wanted to be an equal. Now, the word on the street from Adam was, no. It's God, is me. It's the Hierophant. That's funny. Is God, is me, is you, is our kids, right? Now, if any of you are familiar with the evangelical umbrella of hierarchy in your life, that's it. That's the umbrella, right? And Lilith was like, I think the fuck not. I'm not interested in that. And the way I like to tell this story is one of the major reasons that they were having issues was because Adam wanted to have missionary sex where he was dominating her the entire time. And she was like, I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in boring ass missionary sex for my entire life. I need to get on top. I need to enjoy myself. And Adam was like, nah, you can be subservient to me or nothing. And Lilith was like, bet, and left. Now, we know that Lilith was demonized. She's literally considered Baphomet's consort, Baphomet being the satanic church's depiction of the devil, right? She is, in lore, she is said to eat children. Yes, Lilith, the OG brat, for sure. she is said to devour children, while the mythology that's not religiously informed says that she's the patron of children, that she is a protector of children. So Lilith's lack of presence on the Lover's card is extremely important because, and Ryan and I have talked about this before. I don't know that we've talked about this on anything that we've shared, but before Eve, when it was Adam and Lilith, they were both whole people. They were both two fully individuated people. And the belief of dominance or power, the misuse of power, and the original sin, which the original sin was not Eve taking the apple, it was Adam lying about what God said, in case anybody wanted to know. God only told him, you're not supposed to do this, or you don't do this. And Adam said, God said not to do this or this, because someone exercised power over him. So he needed to project that onto someone else and dominate something else, right? This representing the initial fault line in our masculine spectrum of connection or loneliness. I'd rather have power than be connected, right? Whereas Lilith represented, again, her presence there represented two fully individuated people whole unto themselves, right? Now we have the invention of the ego, if you will, right? We've got the ego, who I know myself to be, and then we've got our conscious and subconscious energies down here, right? And we have both masculine and feminine conscious and subconscious energy. If I may, for a moment, if any of you are watching Escaping Twin Flames, the absolute batshit freaking bananas third episode of like telling people you are the divine masculine, you need to transition. What is
I told B before we watched the third episode, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is where this show is going, and I hope it's not, but I'm pretty sure this is what's about to happen. And sure as shit, I was like, oh my God.
That rhetoric in our online communities is so dangerous. People misuse and abuse divine masculine, divine feminine all the time.
Something me and I started talking about with B was those two. We talk a lot about like pedestaling and how that's not a good thing in relationships and all that. Mm-hmm. Those two words, divine masculine, divine feminine, that's pedestals that nobody needs to be putting each other up on, putting yourself up on.
When you add a in front of it, when you add a you are the divine masculine, the divine. No,
Crazy.
like, oh my gosh, y'all. Sorry, side tangent. Back in, we get to the Lover's card not with Adam and Lilith. We get to the Lover's card as the mythology goes, with Adam and Eve, representing two fractured people, right? Because Eve pulled back from the connection and retreated into that feminine energy, right? Our feminine energy is the spectrum. Our feminine spectrum is the spectrum from control to submission. She was pushed immediately into like that deep recess of the feminine energy, which says, I have to yield my ability to consent in order to push you away, right? So again, we're literally talking about the original fucking conflict in here. And it lives out here, and it's often mirrored in the Lovers, right? So the Lovers also represent the as above to as above, so below. So below being the Devil card. Dun, dun, dun. Capricorn has entered the chat, right? So when we get to the Devil card, if we can think of the Lovers as the peak, the zenith, right? We go all the way down to the lowest point, we go all the way down to the lowest part of our chart. It's called the Imum Coli, right? That's the so below. It's your fourth house. It's your family of origin. Your family of origin is usually your lowest, darkest place, if that's part of your personal lore, right? So when you look to the Devil card, you see the same two people and the same winged deity. But now you see the other side of it. right? The shadow side, the twin side, right? And you can see our masculine and feminine subconscious in Capricorn's card. So, or in the devil card, which is Capricorn's card. So you go from the lovers to the devil. The winged deity is the same because it's you. It's always you, right? You are the person that's perceiving this situation. You are the person, you are the ego determining what goes into this compartment and what goes into this compartment. You're the ego determining what am I going to allow in and what am I not going to allow in. Now, you don't have to wait until you get to the underworld to bail out the boat, the Six of Swords, so to speak. You don't have to wait until then. You can bail out the boat with distractions whenever you want. Wherever Gemini lives on your chart, do a self-audit. What's distracting me? What's empowering me? And I would also ask, what's my attachment to the distraction? What's my repulsion to the empowerment? That's exactly what we're going to pull cards on today. I don't think any of y'all were around when I was tarot reading, but like professionally, like you could book a reading with me. But I fucking love letting the readings reveal themselves, like literally the questions. I actually need that. Letting the questions reveal themselves while we're in the reading. So I am very excited to dive into this. We are looking at the cross section of as above, so below, as within, so without. This is the Gemini Lover's card, self-contained paradox exploration. We are going to look at what's distracting us, what's empowering us, and then the paradox. What's my attachment to the distraction? What's my repulsion to the empowerment? I want to understand and relate better, right? Being able to relate is one of Gemini's strong suits, but if Gemini never stays to figure out how to continue relating, Gemini will always settle for a first impression. Gemini will be unable to endure. Got to commit to the bit. That's the theme here. We've got to commit to the bit. What is the theme of our distractions? The theme of what is empowering us? What is our attachment to the distractions and our repulsion to the empowerment? That second. Oh. We stuck in our feminine energy, y'all. That's real loosey-goosey shit. There's no structure there. There's no boundaries there. The Empress is a taker. The Empress is entitled. The Empress is the only feminine card that precedes the masculine card in the entire tarot. When you have flow first with no form, you get that bankless river situation like we talked about, where it just trickles out into nothingness, right? So the distraction is not having structure. So what's the attachment to that? Page of Swords. I get to always make new plans, and I fucking love planning, y'all. I love a good plan, visualizing my plan, making my plan, writing my plan down, and I love it so much that I have used all of my planning energy, and now I'm not going to create, right? We also have Nine of Wands reversed here, suggesting that a lack of a plan keeps you from figuring out whether or not your idea actually has the ability to go the distance. You're fucking scared.
Analysis paralysis.
Yes, you're fucking scared. Let's talk analysis paralysis. Have any of y'all ever dealt with that where you're like, I have so much to do that I can't figure out what to do? And you're like, you feel like a sim glitching, like you don't know which way to go?
All the time.
That is my whole life.
Yeah.
That's called freeze mode, baby. Let's talk freeze. I have been having so much fun with one of my clients. All of my clients are, I love this about like my client load and getting to pick the people whose stories I want to invest in, but all of my clients are just wide open to embodying the new, practicing the new, like getting into it and really leaning in, right? So one of my clients, I've been having a lot of fun with her working through her freeze response. It's been a very emotional experience because if you have ever been in pain and you take the numbing away from the pain, you know that you have to feel it now, right? So it's been a very emotional time for her, but it's also been a really fun, intuitively explorative time. And the reason for that is when you're in freeze, let's say I've got 5 things and I'm like, fucking ADHD, like I want to do that. Wait, no, should I do this first? Should I do this first? How should I do? You're frozen. First step is noticing it. I'm frozen. The second step is to do literally anything else. I'm talking like if you stop, you sit down on the ground and you start full body belly laughing on purpose. Okay. If you decide I'm going to practice my stop, drop, and roll all of a sudden, if you decide what you need to do, like you can do literally anything. So it's anything. So thinking of this like a free intuitive writing exercise, right? I'm frozen, throw myself on the ground, right? It doesn't have to be logical. It has to be literally anything else. So the thing that this is going to do is it's going to reorient your language center. Boom. That's the neurological thing it's going to do. It is going to interrupt your language center, which says, this isn't right. We don't sit down on the floor and laugh like a maniac. If you start, oh my God, if you start pointing out stuff in the room around you and you say green shirt and it's a blue shirt, your brain's coming back online quick. Okay. This is not for when you're way beyond capacity. This is for just when you're in a moment of freeze, right? I'm initially frozen, right? For some of us,
I'm imagining myself, sorry to get it. I'm imagining myself like pointing at a green shirt and calling it blue, and my brain being like, bro, are you okay?
That's exactly what it's like. That's exactly what it's like. If y'all don't follow, I'll have to share something. I can't remember his handle off the top of my head. There's a guy I follow and I've shared a few of his things before. But his page is for parenting.
Yeah, I started following. He's good. Yeah.
And he does a lot of brain-based hacks to help your kids when they're somewhere in between the 0 to 5 minute meltdown stage. If you've never been around kids, helping them when they're in that stage is critical so that you don't get to the 2-hour meltdown stage. Okay. So, one of the things that he talked about was this exact thing, which we used to use with our kids at the therapeutic day school I worked at, which was literally bringing your language center online by intentionally calling something the incorrect name, the incorrect color, something that's going to bring your brain out of the limbic mode and just kind of like shoot forward into not rest and digest, but getting you out of that fight, flight, freeze. Mm-hmm. Right? So the first thing we want to do is get off of freeze. When I'm off of freeze, I can bring myself back into my capacity. When I'm back in my capacity, I can reorient myself to, how do I want to say this? To pour myself back into my routine, right? To give myself back to the structure that I already created. So for those of us that are really wanting to grow and take the next steps, the Gemini new moon is calling us into our consistency and our love of planning that is currently superseding our love of getting what we're planning for. Okay. Let go of the relationship to the planning. I want to know. We have underworld. If you were wondering if this is a subconscious behavior, it is. Isn't that such a fun way to say, well, I have no control over it? It's subconscious, Brittany. I'm not doing it on purpose. Okay. I had a comment on one of my videos on TikTok yesterday. This person was like, turns off my automatic response after watching one TikTok video. I was like, we don't need to turn it off. We have to be willing to go down and see it. I have to be willing to look at it. If I'm not willing to look at and admit, hey, I fucking love distracting myself. I love distracting myself so much because I'm actually more comfortable being in my underworld than I am being out with the living.
It's like we talked about, like that's like autopilot response.
Yes.
Oh, it's subconscious, it's subconscious.
Autopilot.
Like we talked
Yep.
about like the other day, it's not necessarily about not having autopilot responses. Autopilot's fine for all intents and purposes for other things, but like we need to repurpose that autopilot. Like we talk
Yep.
about like spending money. It's not that I want to spend less money. I just want to make sure I'm spending my money on the things I want to spend my money on.
Yep.
Autopilot is fine to be in those things in that area of the brain, but you've got to make sure that autopilot is something that's benefiting us rather than a
Yes.
detriment to us.
Yes.
So it's about restructuring it. And like you said, first you got to notice it
Mm-hmm.
and then be like, okay, how can I do this differently?
Yep.
Like,
Because you can't logic your way into doing things differently when you're not, I don't know, even looking at the right pattern.
And like,
you know?
and it goes back to like you were saying, like if it means something about you, if you just notice yourself, like, what am I, like you notice yourself in the mirror, like, what am I doing? And you just like objectively noticing yourself. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, that's a weird little autopilot thing that I do. Okay, I wonder if I could change that.
Yeah. And like making it mean something about you means I am bad with my feminine energy. I over rely on my feminine energy, but I fake it to look like an accomplisher with my masculine energy. And that means I'm a deceiver and a manipulator and blah, 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 blah. Those fucking stories and the over pathologized common experiences people have is the number one way you're going to further separate yourself from your masculine energy. You're going to further skew that spectrum over to disconnection, because one of the things that these over pathologized, overly personal responsibility, like perspectives tend to do for us is isolate us further. And so sometimes we can be operating in one way, thinking that we are really helping ourselves, but the thing that we've identified, the pattern we've identified, that's obscured by the bigger truth that we are the bigger pattern that's at play. Right? So whenever possible, get your nose away from your own shit. Okay? Whenever possible, back the fuck up. Okay. Don't settle for the first impression when you walk up to the tree and go, that's it. The story is real. I'm a terrible person. I am a manipulator because I'm doing X, Y, and Z behavior. And whenever possible, take yourself off of that story, back up and look at it.
Look at things from more than one angle. Rather than
That's
being
how we
like,
describe us.
yeah, rather than being like, oh, that's it. Like you can go look at this side, you can go look at that side, you can look at the top, you can look at the bottom. Like,
and that's really beneficial. Like something that we've been working on together specifically is like the quick fuse, short fuse, like anger response, right? He has Mars in Gemini, so his anger is often willing to settle for just a first impression. And the prompt has been to like keep looking at it, see if that's something that's like actually worth that energy expenditure, right? If it's actually worth it, or if that's an old way of operating, an old way of being, and I just didn't know it, right? We think of automatic as autonomic, and it is not the same fucking thing. It's not the same thing. An automatic response is a response that's happening on autopilot, and there are reasons we go on autopilot. right?
Normally they're like defense things.
Right. An autonomic function in your body is breathing, right? You're not telling yourself to breathe. You are still the person making yourself breathe, but you're not telling yourself to breathe, right? There are plenty of times where we were talking about this last night. I am a goblin. There are plenty of times, or have been plenty of times, where I'm like, I know there are better ways to handle this, but I am still furiously texting away, and I'm going to say the asshole thing I want to say, knowing full fucking well that is not an autonomic, I am out of control response. I am literally aware. I am watching myself do it. And sometimes you just need to be, as Alan Watts says, a little fucking rascally. You need to touch that pulse of how you show up to remind yourself, hey, I actually do that. And I need to observe that. And I need to recognize that, right? So I want to look at what's empowering us. What's empowering that's present? We have the Empress energy as what's distracting. So what is empowering? We have 3 of Wands reversed. Discernment, knowing what is for you and what is not for you. Ending things that you've been connected to. And we also have 6 of Cups reversed, suggesting that what's empowering is a desire for things to be different, right? You desire for things to be different. The thing that maybe it's like I'm like imagining like cogs, but there's something like in here, and honestly it feels like the wands, right? Like the 3 of Wands reversed really suggests that the desire is there, but the action isn't happening, right? Because we've got this 3 and this 6 here supporting, suggesting that there's the potential for wisdom to do something different, right? So what's empowering us right now is our desire and willingness to, or our desire to not have things be the way they were, right? Instead, we have to have our eye on, this is where I'm trying to go. So what is repelling us from the empowerment? Why do we feel repulsed by? I fucking love talking about repulsion and disgust. It's one of my favorite. I do think that's the Sagittarius or the 6th house, 12th house axis is disgust and turn on, but we can talk about that at another time. So what is causing us to feel repulsed by being empowered? It's the idea that we're not going to be a victim anymore. It's the idea that we are not going to be a victim anymore. It's the responsibility for self-action. And it's the idea that we are going to actually have what we want and be able to share that with other people. Some of us have big dreams of being able to provide for other people. I would love to be able to buy 15 houses and then text all of my friends and be like, hey, I know I said we were meeting up like a couple of times a year, but how about you just come get this house and this house and this house and this house, and then we'll all just vibe in our little community. I want to be able to give people things, invest in people. But in order to invest in people, you got to have things that you can invest with, right? Aside from time, energy, and love and attention, right? So for some of us, the thing that keeps us repulsed by being empowered into taking action is the idea that we're going to have what we want, and then we have to take responsibility for getting what we want, right? Because responsibility is often a really cloudy, now I'm looking at the 8 of Swords with her eyes covered. Responsibility is often clouded by whatever it is like you perceive responsibility to be. If you perceive responsibility to be arduous, it's going to be. So of course you're going to keep it at bay. For me, and Ryan and I have talked about this, we were both oldest children. And when you're told that all of a sudden you're going to have to be responsible, and responsibility meant being a certain way, and you got to be a certain way, and you got a certain role to fill, and blah, responsibility can feel restricting. Responsibility can feel like it's going to squeeze the life out of you. Right. So of course you're going to be not naturally, but you were conditioned to be repulsed by responsibility as an adult. But as an adult, if you want things that require you to have that responsibility, you're gonna have to stop pretending like you live with your fucking mom and dad. You're gonna have to stop pretending like you're still that kid and become the trusted caregiver and the trusted channel for those younger versions of you. Surprise, all of you are channels. You are all psychic and you are all channeling your inner children and all of the inner versions of you all the time. And you are doing it on your automatic responses. Congrats, you're a channel. Your psychic powers have been activated. Now, what the fuck are you going to do with it? Right? Are you going to use it to help yourself? Or are you going to use it to keep yourself wrapped in the story of self-judgment, wrapped in the story of, I don't take action, I can't do that, whatever. We have a responsibility to choose our perspective. We talked about that last week. And so when we have the responsibility to choose our perspective and we have a healthy relationship to responsibility, it's not a mask. Now it's me. Right? So I want to pull some cards for this revision to empowerment. We have fate. Damn. For some of us, this is a fucking fate point. Right? Let's talk fate points. Let's talk Wheel of Fortune. Okay. The Wheel of Fortune has 4 points on it. It's a circle. It's got endless points, but again, we're not doing math class here. So we've got a circle. We've got the 4 points on the wheel. We've got the Wheel of Fortune often has someone at the top of the wheel and someone at the bottom. So first of all, if you're getting off the wheel, get off at the bottom. Sometimes you got to get off at the top. I understand. That's a little scary. Okay. It's high up. Things are at their worst. And I understand that we want to get off when things are at their worst. Getting off then is usually a reaction and it's not going to yield anything that's going to be long lasting. Right. But when we get off at the bottom, we can step back. We can take a bigger view. So I look at the Wheel of Fortune as a spiral, not a wheel, first of all. So we've got this spiral spiraling tighter in and down. Okay. The Wheel of Fortune represents fixed points on our timeline. And it's not like on December 3rd, 1928, you're going to experience blah, blah, blah. And then December 3rd, 1937, you're going to experience what it's not like that. It's you as a person have the makeup to want to experience this particular lesson, this particular moment, this particular theme. I like to refer to them as archetypal experiences. Okay. When you have this soul desire for a particular archetypal experience, this is what's called a fate point. Okay. It's a lesson that you are going to come up to, a moment that you're going to come up to over and over and over again. Why? Because the spiral is going in tighter and tighter and you're hitting the same points, but the circle's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and it's less avoidable. I know for me right now, everything I'm doing is screaming because I've been squeezed like this. I'm like one of those little stress balls with the eyes popping out. That's how tight this fate point is. Okay. It feels like being pushed through a pinhole. Meet the moment. What are we so fucking afraid of? For some people, the revolutionary, like literally being seen, being heard, being known for going your own way. For some people, we are afraid to be creative, the paradox of creativity, right? What's the paradox of creativity? If I create, then, oh no, I'm going to have to create more. And what if the creativity never comes back? Right? We were just listening to John Mayer on Rick Rubin's podcast, and he said a line. John Mayer said, all you need is a sentence sometimes. He's talking about music writing, songwriting. All you need is a sentence. I can feast for months on a sentence. But sometimes you go a long time between getting those sentences.
What he said
Right?
was like, sometimes I feel like the question is, where the fuck am I going to find a
Where
sentence?
the fuck am I going to find a sentence? Right? Sometimes it feels like, yeah, but if I give all of my creativity to this, then what's left? Right? So I'm going to answer that question. You're not going to be worried about what's left if you're giving to yourself first. We have started doing morning pages, giving yourself a creative outlet first thing in the morning. If you are not making trash art and you find yourself to be a creative, if you are not making trash art in your day, right? Whenever you are at your peak creativity, I want you to practice getting the shit out first, right? That's morning pages for me. That's trash art for me. I love to make trash art on shuffles is one we really love. I
Just do it on, I do it on Canva now.
Canva, yes,
make
there are so
cool
many
stuff,
resources for it. Shuffles is just from Pinterest, so I get to use all my Pinterest board stuff. And I get to relive my Zanga days. And I was really good at Zanga, okay? And I'm really good at shuffles. So I really enjoy being there and making my little trash art. I have like 2 Nanny Fine collages on there. Like, it's just random shit. I can't put that anywhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, if I put that on my freaking Instagram, people are like, who the fuck is this?
I was gonna say Instagram wouldn't know what to do with
They don't know what to do with Nanny Fine, okay? So for some of us, we're fearing that if I pour out my creative energy, right? And this could be a generative, right? There are people I know in our community who are working on becoming parents. What happens after I create that fucking thing? After I create that baby, what do I do? Right? Am I gonna have anything left for me? That's a very real fear that keeps us at arm's length distance between us and what we want, right? For some of us, what we're so afraid of is fucking trusting ourselves, probably because we are the ones that hurt ourselves in the past, right? As we are all prone to do. So go ahead and take off that I'm the only one that's ever done that bullshit hat, okay? It's not real. That's made up. It's in your head. Trusting yourself means giving the trust before it is earned. Unfortunately, trust and courage both work the same ways. You got to do the thing to get the thing, right? You got to do the trust to get the trust. And trust isn't offered on the idea that it's a fragile little egg that needs protecting. Trust does not need protecting. Trust needs keeping. I am a keeper of that trust. But trust is not for fragility. Trust is made to be durable. Trust is made to endure the bumps and falls that you take, the things that you do that take you out of yourself, the things that show you yourself in a way that you maybe wish you hadn't seen.
I was gonna say, like, trust shows you how fragile you are.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. If you have to, like, whether it's holding your own trust or somebody else's, that's boundaries. I'm the one that's fragile if I can't hold that trust.
Yeah.
Like that trust is durable.
Mhm.
I'm the one that's got to be durable enough to hold that thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Making yourself durable enough for trust and making your trust durable enough for you is extremely important. We also have shadow. This is a big moment for some of you. Some of you are genuinely confronting something that has sat in the dark. Maybe you just never had language to understand being beyond your capacity and needing to stretch into that. Maybe that's the shadow, it's just that you didn't know, right? Gemini is about what we know and don't know. So what we don't know is being illuminated under this full moon, right? So maybe you didn't know that this was part of your story, that you had shown up in this way. This is what it means to take something off autopilot without judgment or shame. If you have not read Existential Kink by now, please do it, okay? Existential Kink, she talks about shame in your healing practices. And I love the way she talks about it. You cannot shame yourself into healing, is my simple takeaway. You cannot shame yourself into self-love. You cannot shame your shadows into the light. They will retreat. This is not a place for being perfect where you're headed. This is a place for that messy action that we talked about last week. So what are we so afraid of? It sounds like ourselves, right? That Gemini mirror. I'm afraid of trusting myself. I'm afraid, will I have the energy to continue creating after I create? I'm afraid of what will happen or what won't happen. Spoilers, you won't know until you're doing it, what's going to happen or not happen. You won't know what you have the capacity for or not for. You won't know until you're doing it, right? But you can have a better idea of what you have capacity for every day. So I want you to think of capacity like a balloon. It is in your best interest to keep that balloon stretchy, to recognize when you might need a new balloon, need a little break for a moment. Some days you're going to have all of the energy in the world to blow that thing up to maximum capacity. Sunday, some days you're going to be walking around with like a sad little Charlie Brown balloon dangling behind you, and that's what you have capacity for. But if you have to tell yourself it's sad, this is what I have capacity for, again, you're going to stay invested in that story. If you tell yourself, this is what I have capacity for, this is all I'm blowing it up, I don't have to do anything more. You can start collecting data there. Because if all you got the energy for is some sad Charlie Brown days where you're dragging that balloon behind you and it looks like a little blobby ball, right? That's where your work is. Oh shit, I actually have way less energy than I thought. What are some things I can do to restore my energy, to rejuvenate myself, right? For most of us, rejuvenation comes with regulation. I've been talking about the Chinese body clock. I talked about it last week on our call, talked about it on my stories. I have been nerding out with other people who are interested in these things in a way that is similar to how I am interested in it. And the main thing that I keep coming back to is our digestion. Our guts are extremely intelligent. And if you have any, like, even little inkling that your digestion is something that you need to be paying attention to, Lilith is in Virgo right now. Reckon your guts. Okay, so we need to be paying attention to the boundaries with our guts. Lilith is a representation of our boundaries. So let's talk at the end here about boundaries. Boundaries are what I do when. That's it. When I am overstimulated, I do blank. I don't stay in conversations where people yell at me. That's a game plan. If someone's yelling at me and I restate my boundary, the only thing I have to do is exit the conversation. That is a map. That is a game plan, right? Boundaries tell us what we do when a certain thing happens. That's the antidote to this Empress is boundaries. Boop. That's it. The antidote to the Empress is boundaries. A boundary is when I wake up, I take my vitamins, right? Or a boundary when I wake up, I whatever it is that you do, right? Boundaries give us a game plan. They tell us exactly what we're going to do. And our boundaries are always renegotiable. Our boundaries are always renegotiable. In fact, I believe one of the messages on our numerological card of the day was a reminder that you can reassess whenever you want. Okay. The other day we had a conversation about reassessing a risk that we'd been taking. We hadn't checked in on that risk since we were like teenagers. And it was like, oh wait, we're both kind of feeling anxious about doing this thing. So maybe I was like, you know what? We could reassess what level of risk we're willing to take in this area. And we were both like, huh, okay. Well, what would adult me choose? And then we made that fucking choice, and that was the boundary. That was that.
I'm realizing, like, you've probably noticed this in the past few days, of like, I'm always like constantly like, well, 20-year-old Ryan did this. As much as I love 20-year-old Ryan, he was kind of a dumbass. And there's a lot of things that we need to do now that change what we do now than what we did then. I'm like realizing, like you said, like I'm doing these things that I still did as a teenager, as a 20-year-old. I'm like, I don't need to do that. And that's taking that autopilot off and repurposing
because
it.
it's just that it got put on autopilot. I never stopped to question the tension this creates in my body because I never stopped to notice the tension. And now that I stop to notice the tension and make myself aware of my body's subtle cues, it's a lot harder to fuck with me. It is a lot harder to fuck with me. That doesn't mean that I'm not a soft little girl still, because trust, I am. But it is a lot harder to get me to go outside of myself in order to meet you outside of myself now. Right? Because boundaries say, this is what I do when. And as an adult, I say, these are the boundaries I need to update. So please also consider this your invitation into a boundary update. Okay, updating your boundaries. You can start with just simple stuff. What are you already doing? When I wake up, I always go to the bathroom right away. Now do it on purpose instead of on autopilot. Like consciously tell yourself, oh, I woke up, I'm going to go to the bathroom now. That is how you take something that is on autopilot and make it conscious. Then you can progress to something that is a air quotes problem, a thing that you want to change, right? This is an autopilot behavior that I have noticed that I'd like to shift. So now my first step is just making myself aware I am doing it. So maybe the autopilot behavior that I always do is I will finish cooking something and like the pantry doors are open, the cabinet doors are open. Like he closes all of those things behind me. If I am not aware that I'm doing it, I can't stop the behavior. I can judge myself when I turn around and see all of the open things, but I want to get to a point where I notice myself walking away from the cabinet before I've walked away, right? That's ultimately what it means to continue making yourself more subtly aware of what is on automatic. And then you can shift it, right? You can shift it by practicing, right? And we practice on practice days, not game days. Game days, you can review the footage afterward, but practice is practice, game day is game day. And if you're not practicing before game day, you're probably getting to game day ill-equipped, and that's why this shit's on autopilot, right? So this week, as Ryan says, both hands on the wheel. 6s are for moving on, driving away, rowing your boat away from the bullshit. And that's all I got today, guys. Anyone has anything they'd like to share, please feel free to take your mics off. If you'd like a card, feel free to ask. Feel free. All right, if no one has any personal questions, no personal cards you'd like, then I am going to end our call. And I will get this uploaded for y'all. And if you did not see on my poster stories, I will be taking the audio off of, or taking the audio, like sampling the audio from last week to get the meditation out for the capacity meditation, and making a specific video just for that. So you can use that as much as you'd like. You can use it every day. If you are a person who is oriented to the mornings and you like beginning your days in the mornings, and that's how your life is set up, then checking in with your capacity in the morning is really great. If you are a person who gets a little bit later start on your day, whenever it is that you're beginning your day, check in with your capacity, see what you have energy for, that you can dedicate to this, and be willing to free up your energy with some of those distractions. Attachments are only as strong as the things that you do to strengthen them, right? We're taking these things off of autopilot so that they're no longer getting, it's like, I'm not going to work out this arm anymore, right? This is going to continue to get weaker and weaker. The less I work out that attachment strategy, the less I deepen that attachment strategy or that thing, the less ability it has to sneak up on me, right? So, all right, friends, I will see y'all next week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.